I never imagined the woman I loved for over a decade would betray me in such a brutal way. One rainy night, I stumbled upon a secret that shattered my world. My beautiful wife, Andrea, was living a double life. The sight of her with another man in our bed burned into my memory. I felt a rage like never before. Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you," all lies. That moment changed everything. Now I'm a man with nothing to lose and revenge in my heart. This is the story of betrayal, confrontation, and the dark path I've chosen.
"What were you looking for, dear?" Andrea asked calmly. She seemed totally relaxed, as if having a box of things in her bag was normal. I couldn't find the words and mumbled something unclear. "Your key. I need to move your car. Why do you have that in your purse?" I added, feeling confused by her indifference. Why? Why? Why is there a box in your purse?" I had started to think clearly again. There was a long pause before she replied. She frowned slightly, took a deep breath, and said, "Well, you don't want me to be unprepared, do you?" It hit me hard. I stumbled back and sat down at the kitchen table. I didn't know what to think or say. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Andrea continued, "I always take precautions. I want to keep everything safe." She said this as if it was the most normal thing ever, as if my question was silly. I felt foolish. Before going further, I probably should tell you a bit about myself and the Stewart family. My name is Jonelle Stewart. I am 33 years old. I am married to Andrea Stewart, who is also my age. We met in college and married right after graduation. I am a mechanical engineer, and Andrea is a real estate agent. We have 3 wonderful daughters. We live in a nice neighborhood in Albany, New York. Our home is a big 2-story house with a large garage, a winding driveway, and a pool in the backyard. It has 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. Honestly, it is bigger than we need, but Andrea found it at a good price, so we bought it. We have lived there for about 3 years and gotten to know our neighbors. The schools nearby are great, and we both have an easy commute to work. Overall, life was almost perfect. Almost. If it were perfect, I wouldn't be working 60 hours a week, and Andrea wouldn't be working all hours, including weekends. We try to put the kids first and share dinner together at least 3 times a week. Sundays are our special time to connect. We do activities together and then enjoy a meal, sharing stories and plans for the week. For me, the dining table is one of the heartbeats of our home. My parents taught me this. We gather to eat, talk about life, share stories, solve problems, and plan for the future. That's why when Andrea and I decided to talk, it was in the kitchen. We sat down at the table. "This isn't about you, Jonelle. It's just something I need. It's separate from us and our family." The words felt like they came from a stranger, not the woman I had shared my life with for 11 years. She continued, "Don't worry about it. You can forget about it. Our life hasn't changed, and it won't change for you." I took a deep breath and realized I hadn't been breathing. Could I really forget? My wife is with someone else, and I should just let it go? My heart sank. "You've been busy with work, and the kids need us too. It's just a little thing for me," she added. She paused, letting her words sink in. "Our time together has decreased, but at this point we can't change that." I stared at her, shocked. "You think being unfaithful makes you a better wife and mother? How can you say that?" My head tilted slightly, trying to process the absurdity of it all. I couldn't believe this was coming from the woman I thought I knew. Suddenly, the room began to spin. I fell out of my chair, catching myself just in time. I felt sick and rushed to the bathroom. I knelt there, my head against the toilet, trying to pull myself together when Andrea peeked in. "I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't want you to find out this way. I thought it was better you didn't know." She watched as I struggled, then handed me a cool, wet towel. I took it and wiped my face, still shaky. I stood and saw the worry on her face. That was what didn't make sense. Who was this woman? Where was the real Andrea? "I'll take the girls to school and see you after work. I'll make dinner," she said. When the girls went to sleep, I thought we could have a drink and talk. I felt sweat running down my face and struggled to find the words I needed. It was overwhelming. I heard the door slam and her car start up. Slowly, I got up from the bathroom floor, flopped onto the bed, and closed my eyes. I tried to focus on not feeling sick anymore. There was nothing left in my stomach, just the ache of a broken heart. The rest of the day seemed to go by in a haze. I remember calling my boss to say I was sick and couldn't come to work. I had a few things to reschedule, but they could wait a day or two. The house was quiet. Andrea and the girls had left. I glanced at my watch and saw it was already past 10. I got out of my clothes and stood under the hot shower for what felt like ages, maybe half an hour. It was hard to keep track of time. After drying off, I put on jeans and a shirt and headed back to the kitchen. Everything I had tried to prepare earlier was gone. The window was open, and the smell had mostly faded. I sat at the table staring at the empty space, hoping to figure out what had gone wrong that morning. So many questions ran through my mind. What I really wanted was to go back in time and make the day better. I wished I didn't find a box of condoms in my wife's purse. Maybe she was right that it was better if I didn't know. But now I knew, and it hurt. My mind started to spin again, so I decided to lie down and try to think clearly. After a moment, I stood up and went back to the kitchen. It felt like a scene from a crime show. I poured myself a tall glass of cold water and grabbed a notepad and pen. I took some medicine and began writing notes. I always took notes as an engineer, at least for important things. But it was hard to concentrate on the paper in front of me. I started jotting down thoughts, but they didn't make any sense. I tore the page out, crumpled it, and tossed it away. I wrote many ideas, but always came back to one big question. What happened to my marriage? I decided I needed some fresh air, hoping it would help clear my mind. I walked for nearly 2 hours until I started to feel weak. I realized I hadn't eaten much for breakfast, just a little, and then only had water since. I stopped at a diner and got a bacon, tomato, and lettuce sandwich with a Diet Coke. The food helped a bit, and as I walked home, I thought about what I wanted to ask Andrea. I wanted to understand why she was looking for love outside our marriage and what her plans were moving forward. If she decided to leave, I would fight for our daughters. I wouldn't let them be hurt because their mother was making choices that affected us all. Just because Andrea chose a different path didn't mean my children and I would have to suffer. I loved my wife. I thought I did. Now, I wasn't so sure. Where did it all go wrong? I questioned if I wasn't a good enough husband for her. If I was, why would she look for love with other men? Was she going to leave me? Was she going to take my kids? Was the box of condoms a mistake she made while hiding her secret? Or was it a sign that she was ready to come clean? It drove me crazy. I had tried to get home early that day because I wanted to cook a nice dinner for my family and spend time together. When I got home, I saw that John's car was there, but he wasn't home yet. I thought he might have gone for a run to sort through his thoughts. I tried to make light of the situation, cracking a joke, but John didn't find it funny. He must have felt the weight of everything we discussed that morning. How do you react when your wife tells you she's involved with another man? I could have handled it better. John's discovery of the condoms had thrown me off course. I needed to take control of the situation before it got out of hand. When John came home, he was very quiet. He looked at me with an intensity that felt heavy. He barely said anything, only nodding or responding in grunts. I wore my best jeans and a top, hoping to show him I was still his partner and that our talk didn't change that. After dinner, the girls did their homework while I cleaned the kitchen. Then we all went outside for some fresh air and played hoops in the driveway. John usually loved to join in, but today he stayed inside and didn't say a word. I began to doubt my choices outside of our marriage. I thought, it had only happened a few times, always during the day, and I was always careful. I never let those moments interfere with my family life. But then I remembered how Rob and I met at my job. He also had a family, and I realized that John and I didn't have enough time for just ourselves. We often had to plan our time together, which was exciting but also stressful. It made me think about what we were really doing. I'm joking a bit, but I know you think I'm easy for being unfaithful to my husband. Maybe you're right, or maybe not. John is a wonderful husband and dad. He works hard to support our family, and I know he believes that even if I didn't have my job, we would manage just fine. So he sees my paycheck as extra money, and we save most of it. We used a lot of it to pay off our house early and for some upgrades on our home, but we also have a good amount saved. The thing is, with busy jobs and 3 kids, we hardly have time for ourselves. We miss the moments to truly connect as a couple. We used to be very close every night. Now, if we get to be together once a week, it's a lucky chance. I need more attention, and I know John feels the same way. What we have is special. That's why we have 3 kids and are just starting in our 30s. I wanted to find a way to meet my needs. I didn't want to make John feel insecure by constantly asking for more time together. The quick moments weren't what I wanted. I decided a while back that I could find a way to get what I needed without hurting my family. They always come first, but I thought I could fulfill my needs without risking anything. So far, I've been okay, but now I needed to figure out how to talk to John without making him feel threatened while still having my special time. The children were asleep, and it was a good time to have a chat. I poured myself some wine and brought John his favorite beer. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't very confident this conversation would go the way I hoped. A lot depended on this. "Honey, sit down. We need to talk." John looked at me with curiosity and took a seat. I slid the beer towards him. "I have to tell you, you don't need to worry. I'm not doing anything that will harm you or the kids. You and the kids are my top priority." John seemed confused, looking at me strangely. I kept going. "Really, dear, you don't need to think otherwise. I love you very much." John replied, "Yes, I believe you love me. But do you love me in that special way?" He was sharp with his words. "Yes, dear, I love you very much. I've loved you since the day we met. And my feelings grow stronger every day, especially with each child we have. I'm really happy with our life together." He looked stunned, and when he tried to reply, no words came. He took a small sip of beer. "So why are you seeing another man?" I looked at him seriously. "It's not easy to explain, but I owe you that." I took a sip of my drink and continued. "It started as a fantasy. We all have those, right? I know you do. We talked about some of them before, but over time it grew bigger. Our lives have gotten busy. Your work, my work, the kids. We've spent less and less time together. I longed for you, but I knew we didn't have that time. I had needs that weren't being met, and it felt painful. You were busy with work, and I was busy too. How many late nights and weekends did we work? It was hard to find time for each other," I explained, needing to pause for a moment and take another sip. "So I decided I needed this. I know it sounds silly, but I need the joy that time together brings. It helps me feel better." John sat quietly staring at the table. I saw he didn't know how to react. I went on, "Dear, what I truly want is for us to be close again. I want to feel like your partner, your woman. I just need this moment for myself right now until our lives let us reconnect more." I stood up, taking John's hand and leading him to the bedroom. He followed without saying a word. I began to change, feeling a mix of hope and nerves. You might think I'm being unfaithful, but I love my husband. I just need a bit more from him to be a better wife and mother. My happiness is key to being that better partner and mom. My special time on Thursdays is something I plan to keep doing for a while longer. I believe it will work out, and I think John will understand. He loves me enough to allow me to find my way. Then came the moment when things shifted. I was cleaning and found unopened boxes of items in my wife's purse while looking for her spare car key. There they were, boxes of items I didn't expect to find. My mind raced with thoughts when Andrea walked in and took the box from my hand, putting it back in her purse. "Roy, I need your help." I continued to share what had happened, trying to explain everything in detail. Roy nodded as he listened, making sounds and writing notes on his yellow pad. When I finished speaking, he said, "Well, John, what can I say?" "This is quite a story," he continued. "I'm a divorce lawyer and I hear many sad tales, but this is different. You're paying me $300 an hour for this advice. What can you do about it?" I replied, "What am I supposed to do about my wife and her friend?" He looked serious for a moment, then said, "First, as your lawyer, my advice is simple. Don't do anything foolish. Avoid fights or threats. The New York court won't look kindly on that, and you could end up in jail." "And we don't want that," I said, realizing that being in jail wouldn't solve my problems. I understood that violence wouldn't help. I felt lost and knew I had to do something about this situation. So I asked, "What are my options?" He took a deep breath and said, "There are many actions you can take, but I need to be honest. They're not good." I was surprised by his bluntness, especially from someone so experienced. "What do you mean?" I asked. Roy's expression grew even more serious. He was known as one of the best lawyers around, but he was grounded in reality. At 34, with 3 daughters and a good career ahead, I knew I had to be careful. Roy then explained my choices. There are 7 reasons for divorce in New York, he listed. 1. Cruel treatment. 2. Separation for 1 year. 3. Imprisonment for 3 years or more after marriage. 4. Infidelity after marriage. 5. Living apart under a separation order for at least 1 year. 6. Living apart under a written agreement for 1 year. 7. Separation with a sworn statement for 6 months. So what should I do? I wondered. Number 4, about infidelity, seemed to be my best choice at first. I marked it, but also considered living separately. Roy mentioned that the separation options, 5 and 6, could be solutions, as many clients use number 7, the no-fault reason when one partner wants out. But he pointed out that number 4 appeared to be a strong candidate for now. Yet he paused and added, "The real challenge is your daughters. I'm sure you want to be a full-time dad." I looked surprised. "Of course I do. That's why I'm here." Roy nodded and said, "If you divorce now, you could end up as a part-time dad, alone and struggling financially unless you earn considerably more later." His words hit me hard. I felt stunned, like I had been struck unexpectedly, confused and unsure of everything. After taking a sip of water to steady myself, I asked, "What are you trying to tell me?" My heart raced as I felt anxious, my blood pressure rising. In a calm voice, he said, "John, I need to be honest with you. You're in a tough spot." I felt as if my world had turned upside down. I was overwhelmed by the realization that my wife's actions had turned my life upside down. Everything around me felt chaotic and time seemed to stop for a moment. Suddenly, I noticed Roy on one side of me and his secretary Shirley on the other. She held out a bottle of water, offering it to me. It felt like water for someone who was drowning. My mind was racing, and I didn't know what to think or do. I struggled to breathe, feeling lightheaded. I just wanted to find a way back to calm. I picked up the water bottle and drank it all in one big gulp before giving the empty bottle back to Shirley. Once I was able to breathe normally again and think clearly, I turned to Roy and thought about the 7 reasons for divorce in New York. "So why shouldn't I think about number 4 on your list, Roy? You see, my wife has been seeing another man for a while now. She even told me about it in our kitchen. Why am I waiting around? It's her fault for cheating, not mine." Roy nodded as if he understood everything without saying a word. But then he did speak. "I wouldn't want Roy as my lawyer in a criminal case. How can you defend yourself if your lawyer looks confused and winces in front of the jury? No, Roy was good at divorce cases, so I decided to stick with him. John, I don't want to be rude, but I have to be honest with you. In your situation, you might lose a lot more than you think you will gain. You can deal with your wife's cheating, but you will lose your kids, your home, your money, and most importantly, your happiness." He paused for a moment before he continued. "I know this feels extremely unfair to you, and it really is. But the law controls divorces, and if your wife doesn't hurt you or the kids, the court will likely give custody to her," he said. "I know what you're thinking. You believe her cheating should matter in court, but usually it doesn't." Roy looked upset by this situation. It seemed like he personally cared about how unfair divorce laws are in New York. I'm sure many of his clients would want infidelity to be considered in custody and home decisions, but it isn't. I decided to take another breath. Ugh! I looked around the room before focusing back on my lawyer. I felt lost. "So, let me get this straight, Roy. Andrea can see other men whenever she wants, and I can't do anything about it. And if I divorce her, she'll take my kids and my house, and I will probably have to pay for her lifestyle." I wasn't sure if I was asking a question or just repeating what I knew. Deep down, I felt like I messed up 11 years of my life with someone who probably laughs at me every day, especially when she is with her new partner. What if I kick her out? If I said I was seeing other women, she would be furious and would probably want to throw me out. Why can't I do the same to her? Wouldn't the court consider that? Roy nodded and said, "Well, John, you can certainly try that. But I have to warn you that it has rarely worked in the past. Your wife Andrea would tell the court that kicking her out stops her from seeing the kids. She would argue that you are treating her unfairly, and her lawyer would ask the court to give her back custody of the children. New York courts tend to favor mothers. Mothers must meet certain standards, but unless you have strong proof that Andrea is not a good mother, I have to tell you that trying to deny her access to the home and kids will probably not work." I let Roy's words sink in. I sat still, feeling numb. What was I going to do? If I left, I would lose my kids, my home, and much of my money. Plus, she could see other men in my house even while the kids were there. This situation felt hopeless. I realized I couldn't make Andrea leave. If she wanted to, she could get a lawyer and quickly get an order from a judge to return. Doing this would only make me look bad in court. Any judge, especially a woman who is a mother, would likely look unfavorably on my attempts to separate Andrea from the kids. No, that plan wouldn't work. So, what was I supposed to do? I looked up and saw Roy talking, but I didn't catch any of it. Finally, I heard him say, "John, do you understand what I'm saying?" I shook my head. "Sorry, Roy, but I didn't hear what you just said." He gave me a serious look and repeated it. "My advice, John, is to go home and try to forget what your wife told you about her seeing someone else. If that's too hard, maybe you should see a marriage counselor and find a solution that works for both of you. If the counselor can't help, I can help create a prenuptial agreement that works for you and Andrea. That way, both of you can stay in the house and, most importantly, be with your children." So, here I was, nothing to do. If I couldn't handle doing nothing, then I needed to agree to let Andrea continue seeing other men. Because if I couldn't do one of these two things, the other option wouldn't be good for me or my kids. Wow! I went back to my office, closed the door, and sat quietly with a cold bottle of water, thinking about Roy's advice. I tried to imagine how I could cope with this new situation. I took deep breaths, holding each one for a few seconds before letting it out. Andrea and I needed to talk again. I wasn't sure when, but it had to happen. Maybe more than once. The first week living in our house felt pretty normal. The 3 girls were busy with school, sports, and other activities. I didn't have time to think about how my relationship with my mother had changed. Things were different with Andrea. She was not the same as she had been for the first 13 years we were together. This was a new reality for me. I wasn't sure if Andrea felt anything had changed now that her feelings and plans were clear. My 3 daughters, Laura, who is 6, Matilda, who is 8, and Diana, who is 11, had no idea about the shift between their mother and me. As far as they knew, life in our family was the same, at least for now. Andrea acted like everything was normal. She greeted me at the door with a kiss and her usual kindness. She asked about my day at work and shared stories about her day too. She took care of the kids as usual, cooked meals and did chores. Everything seemed normal, and it felt like there was no secret about her spending time with another man. When she came home, she looked and acted like everything was just fine. I wondered if I was imagining things. Was I just being foolish? In the second week on Thursday evening, Diana had soccer practice. Her team practiced once a week, usually on Thursday nights, and they played games on Saturday mornings. Laura and Matilda often went to practice with me, and the whole family would go to the games together. Matilda had ballet lessons, and I was used to Andrea not going to practices. She often had work to do, and I didn't think much about it. But this Thursday felt different. This was when Andrea spent time with Rob, the man she had been seeing for the last 2 years. They usually met during the day or after work. Before heading home, Andrea took a shower, and then she met the girls to talk about soccer and school. But now, I knew. I understood that my wife was no longer fully mine. Part of her life now belonged to Rob. This thought slowly sank in. My mind knew everything had changed, but my heart was still catching up. I felt a struggle between loving Andrea, who was a caring wife and mother, and seeing her as someone who was unfaithful. I had never met Rob, and I didn't want to. I was afraid I might lose control and do something I would regret, something that could land me in trouble. I kept hearing my lawyer Roy's warning, "Don't do anything stupid, John." By the 3rd week, I went to work each day with a heavy feeling in my stomach. I had to focus hard on my tasks. My boss, Ron Walton, noticed I seemed distracted. He was a good man, kind and like a mentor to me. One day he invited me for coffee and gently tried to find out what was wrong. I didn't want to talk about it, but Ron wasn't going to let it go easily. "John, you haven't been yourself lately. Whatever it is, it's starting to affect your work. You're making small mistakes that you normally wouldn't. We can fix this, but you've got to help yourself." I sighed and looked at my coffee cup. "I'm sorry, Ron. I know I haven't been doing my best. I have a personal issue I'm trying to sort out. I don't know how to handle it, and yes, it's affecting my work. I'll do better, I promise. Ron looked at me with concern. Whatever it is, I can help. If you need some time off to deal with it, just say so. You're a valued part of the team. He stood up to leave and put a hand on my shoulder. I mean it. Reach out if you need anything. I watched him go, knowing that my thoughts about Andrea and her choices were taking a toll on me. I was struggling to sleep, focus, and feel okay. Though I couldn't change Andrea's actions, I knew I needed to take care of myself. I had to stay strong for our 3 daughters. So I went back to see Roy and asked him to start working on a post-nuptial agreement he had discussed with his marriage counselor. I felt like I had nothing to lose. In the 4th week, on Tuesday, I got home around 6 in the evening. Andrea was there, and I decided it was a good time to talk. The kids were doing their homework at the dining table while Andrea worked in the kitchen. She was cooking meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green peas, one of the kids' favorite meals. After dinner, I sent the girls outside to play soccer. We didn't have any activities that day, and Andrea hadn't mentioned needing to go back to work. I went outside to join the kids and play a game with them. The heavy feeling in my mind started to go away as I decided to take charge of the situation. I wanted to find a way to accept what Andrea had said about a month ago. She mentioned needing someone else in her life, but that family would always come first. I admired her commitment to me and our kids. After the kids went to bed, I took a bottle of Andrea's favorite white wine from the fridge and grabbed a beer for myself. I poured us each a drink and set them on the dining table. Andrea had done something similar a few weeks back when we talked about our issues. I then walked into our home office where she was working on her laptop and stood in the doorway. "Andrea, please come to the dining room. We need to talk." She looked up quickly, and I turned to head back to the table. A moment later, she came out and sat down. She seemed a bit pale, so I handed her the glass of wine. "You might need this," I said. Andrea took the glass and sipped it. "What do you want to discuss, dear?" I took a small sip of my beer and started. "A few weeks ago, you surprised me by saying you were seeing another man. Since then, you've said you want to keep seeing him. I have to be honest. I'm struggling with that. I can't stand the idea of sharing you with someone else," she replied. "I'm your wife and you're my husband. What I do with Rob once a week is just for fun. It doesn't affect our marriage. It's like if you played squash with another person." I took another sip, trying to process her words. "I understand you feel that way, but I don't see it the same. For me, being close is something we only share." She started to respond, but I held my hand up to pause her. "Let me finish, please." She nodded and took another sip of her wine. "I've talked to a couple of people to help me deal with this, and I have to say that a part of me wishes you'd never told me about your relationship with Rob." I paused, looking into her eyes. "Are there any other men I don't know about?" "No, he's the only one," she said quickly. "There weren't others before him either." I noticed the large gray envelope on the table that contained some papers my lawyer had prepared. I took a long sip of my drink, feeling anxious. "What's in that envelope?" she asked, her tone suddenly serious. "I met with my lawyer, Roy, and a marriage counselor. They suggested we create a written agreement for our marriage." Her face went serious. "More couples are using these agreements to talk about things that often go unspoken," I explained. "I think this could help us. It lays out boundaries that might make us both feel better. I'm not sure we need it, but I can't ignore everything you have going on." I worried that ignoring her relationship would lead me to act out in ways I'd regret. I thought a clear agreement might help her understand how her actions were affecting our family. "Will you end things with Rob? Will you choose to stay with me and the kids? Or will you keep things as they are?" If she chose to stay, there would be consequences. The agreement would mean she could see Rob, but she'd have to be honest with me about it. I would also have the same freedom to make choices. Both of us would need to accept the consequences of our actions. I had the counselor draft the agreement, and I asked Roy to review it for fairness. Andrea took a deep breath, looking from me to the envelope. "Since you feel you need more than I can provide, I'm worried about our family. Our girls need our focus. They are my top priority." She took another sip of wine, looking uneasy. "John, are you saying you want a divorce?" "No, on the contrary. I want us to stay together," I assured her. "I love you, and I don't want to lose you. I want to make sure our daughters are protected no matter what happens between us." I paused to take a sip, gathering my thoughts. I know things have changed, but I hope we can agree on some rules. We should show our girls that they have both a mother and a father and that they can grow up in a stable home. I saw her relax, and I felt a bit of relief. You know I love you and the girls. You're always on my mind. I couldn't help but wonder how she could put family first while still seeing Rob. It didn't seem to fit. I looked her straight in the eyes, hoping to find clarity. Thank you. After a brief pause, I pointed to the envelope. This is the draft of our relationship agreement. I want you to read it and tell me if you think it's fair. We can change anything. We just need to agree on what's going to be. Andrea frowned a little. Do we really need a written agreement for our marriage? We've managed fine for 11 years and we have 3 kids without one. I looked directly at my wife. Ever since you told me about Rob a month ago and that you want to keep seeing him, I thought it would be good to set some rules. I mean, if you want to keep dating him or anyone else, then we need to ensure that our marriage stays strong. I can't just sit here doing nothing and not tell you that I'm worried about our future as a couple and as a family. I need to protect what we have. Andrea. I didn't realize John would feel so worried about my involvement with Rob. It shouldn't be about him. I'm not taking anything away from our marriage for him. Rob is just something casual. Yes, but it's important to me, I said, trying to convince myself to ignore it. I don't want this to mean anything to him. I am John's wife. I love him. Now this situation feels like it is getting too intense. I felt John pulling away from me this past month. I thought we would go back to normal once he forgot. But I realized that we haven't connected in a meaningful way lately. He never touched me unless we were around the kids and then only very briefly. Oh no, we haven't even been intimate for a month. What does this mean? Is he pulling away from me? Is he moving away from our marriage? Am I being pushed out? I need to act quickly before it gets worse. What does he want in this agreement? So, Andrea, please look at this and we can talk about it. I want us to agree on everything before following this agreement. John, I don't need a paper to tell you I love you and our daughters. I looked at Andrea. I never thought I'd need a paper to show my love. But when another man entered our lives, everything changed. I gave her time to think about this while I took a sip of beer. I need to know a few things, like your long-term plans. Do you want to leave me for another guy someday? Is that what you want? This Rob situation is confusing for me. It feels like I'm not enough for you anymore, like I can't make you happy. Oh, John, that's not true. We talked about this. Rob is just something I need. It doesn't change my feelings for you. That's why it happens during the day, she explained. I take care of my needs, then come home to you and our family. I never thought about wanting a different life, except the one with you and the girls. In fact, I thought we should have more kids. This stunned me. What, you want more kids? We need to discuss this, but what's wrong with wanting to grow our family? You and I both love children. Our daughters mean everything to us. Have you considered having a son? I was shocked by Andrea's suggestion for a 4th child. I wondered how we would manage that. She's already so busy with her real estate job and 3 kids take a lot of time. How can she handle another pregnancy? Oh no, is she trying to say she might be pregnant already? And who would be the father? Is it Rob? When do you want to have this baby? I asked in disbelief. We can start any time. Now is a perfect time, she said. Andrea set down her glass and took my hand, leading me to our bedroom. It was a regular day, but tonight felt different. We began in the shower, then moved to the bed. We spent time together that seemed to last for ages. The sheets were a mess afterward, and I felt tired and confused. At breakfast the next day, I reminded Andrea to take the envelope with the relationship agreement. I needed to clear up some things before she continued her normal routine. I wanted her to know that there could be consequences. We can't ignore that we have an open marriage and believe everything will be okay. No. This document is our relationship agreement. It starts the moment we sign it. It outlines our marriage rules and the behavior we both agree to follow for the sake of our family. We have 3 kids, and we both realize that their well-being is the most important thing in our marriage. We agree that breaking this agreement doesn't mean our marriage ends, but shows that we need to discuss it and adjust how we act. And we can decide together how to change this agreement if we need to. These points are not in any specific order of importance, but they remind us of what matters in our relationship. We agreed not to bring up our problems in front of our kids, families, or others during arguments. If we have serious issues, we'll talk about them privately. We promised to take care of our own feelings and worries. We also agreed to spend time alone for ourselves. Every week we will have one evening together without distractions, like cell phones. We want to grow as individuals and be patient with ourselves and each other. We understand that growth doesn't happen overnight. We will support each other's jobs and goals. We agreed to take care of ourselves so we can improve our relationship. Each of us should try to be healthy, and any health problems shouldn't affect the other person too much. Also, if either of us is unfaithful, we agreed to get tested for any health issues and to tell each other right away. We realize that we don't make each other happy all the time, but we both bring our happiness into the relationship. We promise to be honest even when it's hard. We agreed to see our partner as acting in our best interest. We also agreed to recognize our relationship as consisting of 3 parts, you, me, and our combined life together. We will spend a day each week without phones, just focusing on each other. This day is separate from our evening dates. We agreed to have intimate moments together at least once every 2 weeks. We will accept each other's emotions and not take them personally. We promise to stop fighting by saying, "I love you," when things get too heated. If we feel defensive or scared, we'll remember to value each other's feelings and allow space for any tears in our safe relationship. We decided not to spend more than $200 on gifts for birthdays or holidays. We promised to honor our commitments in this agreement and to be patient and kind with ourselves when we make mistakes. This agreement shows our intentions and promises. It can change with both our consent. This agreement does not limit what we owe each other. Our signatures below show our commitment. John Stewart, Andrea Stewart. Week 6, Andrea. I think this relationship agreement is silly. I don't know why John listened to the lawyer and counselor. They don't know me. I met Roy once and never met the consultant. She thought this document would help hold our marriage together. But I don't need an agreement for my marriage with John. He is mine and I am his. It's simple. We have children and we are a family. We will stay together. It's clear. I will talk to John this weekend about this. I will not follow some silly written rules. Week 10. John. Life and work are really stressing me out. I hardly have any time for myself. I need to go for a run to relieve some pressure. I need to manage my rising stress level. My home life feels cold. My effort to ask Andrea to accept the relationship agreement started slowly. After some back and forth, she finally came to an agreement. The final version is much shorter than the first one Roy made for me. The agreement says that we can each have connections outside of our marriage as long as it doesn't disrupt our family life. There can't be any emotional or romantic feelings involved. If that happens, it would mean the end of our marriage, starting a tough fight ahead. I spoke quietly with Roy about the new agreement, asking him to prepare a backup plan in case our marriage falls apart. He is planning that now. Week 12. Andrea. My Thursday sessions continue and I plan to keep it up for a while. John and I have started to be intimate again. We had a break for about 3 months. It was a rough time. I really need my husband more than he realizes. He thinks I don't love him, but I do. I know he loves me too. That's why he put in so much work planning this agreement. He may think about sending me away, but he knows it would only hurt our children. I'm not worried about that. What I really need is to show my husband how much I care for him. John is amazing. He's a wonderful husband and father. What more do I need? Plus, my Thursday plans help with our intimacy. So, things are good right now. This weekend, I will be with my husband to remind him that I'm his and he's mine. He might be tired afterward, but that's okay. Then we can get back to our regular life. Week 16. John. A while back, I decided I needed time for myself away from the family. I used to run a lot during college, but then life got busy. I want to try kayaking and cycling now. I did some research and found several local clubs that meet and have helpful lists of lakes, rivers, and trails. I bought a trekking bike, a mountain bike, and a 13-foot kayak. My kayak has a rudder and a keel, which help it stay steady and turn easily. I took 2 evenings of kayaking lessons to learn the basics and began cycling in the mornings and on weekends. Last Sunday, we planned a family day for hiking and having a picnic. Just before we were set to leave, Andrea got an important call and had to cancel at the last minute. So the girls and I went without her. We hopped in my old Subaru Outback and I let Diane sit in the front. She's big enough and really mature for her age. We hiked for about 3 hours to reach a viewpoint on the mountain. I took out my nice Nikon camera, and the girls took turns taking pictures. After we had lunch, we started to walk back to the car. It rained on our way down, but we had rain jackets, so it wasn't a big deal. We got home after 7 p.m., and Andrea was waiting for us. She changed into jeans and a top and started making dinner. We enjoyed a nice family meal, and the girls proudly shared their photos on our old laptop. After a day of outdoor fun, the girls were tired, so they didn't argue much when it was time to check their homework. They washed up and went to bed, quickly falling asleep shortly after 9 o'clock. Meanwhile, Andrea was busy cleaning and preparing for Monday. Then she looked at me and said softly, "I need your help in the bathroom." "Just a minute, honey. I'll be right there," I replied. A few minutes later, I walked to the bedroom, but Andrea wasn't there. I peeked into the bathroom and saw her there getting ready to take a shower. She looked pretty, and for a moment I just stared. Seeing Andrea like that made me think about how much I care for her. I realized that I wanted to make sure our relationship stayed strong even after all these years. There's something special about her that makes me want to keep winning her heart. I stepped into the shower with her, wanting to share that warm moment together. The rest of the night made me feel really happy. The next morning, I woke up feeling great about my time with her. Monday is always busy at my job, and this day was no different. I had many things to do and focused on my work. A few times I thought about calling or texting Andrea, but chose to stay busy instead. The weeks went by. Andrea found joy in her routine. I was happy to see her smile when she greeted our daughters and me, feeling the energy of family life. After a long week of work, Saturdays became my favorite. After the girls went to bed, I looked forward to spending time with Andrea. I noticed that cycling was important to me, and I planned a weekend trip with my cycling group. It was set to start at a place about an hour's drive from the city, exploring trails through the countryside. It sounded exciting, and I had already registered. We planned to have dinner together on Saturday night and enjoy a big event afterward. This life keeps us busy, but I cherish the moments with my family and look forward to every chance to share our days together. Most people will probably have a few beers. I've been trying to stay away from alcohol for a few months now to cut down on extra calories and help manage my feelings when I'm angry or sad. Alcohol isn't something that helps me, so avoiding it is the best choice for my peace of mind. Overall, I'm feeling much better and getting stronger. I run almost every day, and I've added cycling to my routine, which has really helped my legs get stronger. I noticed my pants were becoming tighter, so I bought a new pair that fits a more athletic shape. There are around 100 people signed up for this event, so it should be a lot of fun. As for Andrea, John is spending more of his free time biking and kayaking. He wakes up at 5 a.m. to run for more than an hour, then showers and gets ready for work. His breakfast is usually fruit, yogurt, and a cup of coffee. I take the kids to the school bus stop, then head to my job. John is usually home when the kids come back from school, or they go to our neighbor's house. We have an agreement with our neighbors that the girls can stay there for about an hour until one of us gets home. This weekend, John is going on a group trip away from town. He told me he would leave on Friday and be back around 7 o'clock on Sunday. His new bike arrived on Wednesday from the bike shop. I was home when it was delivered. The man who brought it was very friendly. That's all I know about bikes. As soon as John got home, he quickly changed into his biking clothes and went for a ride. An hour later, he came back smiling, really happy with his new bike. "I had a great time this weekend. My new Trek Marlin 6 is amazing," he said. He mentioned that the ride was very fast and the trail was really challenging. He said he sweated a lot and got some cramps when he pushed himself too hard. He even fell a couple of times while turning, but luckily both he and the bike were okay, just a few minor scrapes. On Sunday morning, he got a flat tire. A support car was nearby, so he quickly fixed it and got back to riding. On Saturday night, we had a buffet dinner at the hotel where we all stayed, followed by a bonfire. I had some beer, which was a nice break to chat with many of the people from my weekly rides and share biking stories. I met Jane and her sister Judy. They are both in their early 30s and really good cyclists. Judy lives with her boyfriend who works for a skateboard company. She said that while they're made in China, they get painted in the U.S. and then sent to stores. Jane mentioned that her boyfriend is a bit strange, which made Judy frown at her. Judy teaches elementary school. Jane, on the other hand, is trying to be a lawyer at a firm in the city. She is single again after her marriage ended 2 years ago. She didn't share much, but I could tell she felt she had made a mistake marrying that guy, and the divorce was her chance to fix it. Anyway, I really enjoyed the weekend, especially getting to know Jane and Judy better. It's now week 25. The nights are getting cooler with fall almost here, and the kids are back in school. I have a few new projects starting at work. I found out that the law firm my company uses is the same one where Jane works. Her full name is Jane Francis, and I learned that she's working in the contract law department. I saw her at a meeting in the same building where my office is. She waved at me when she spotted me walking past the conference room. At first, I didn't recognize her because she looked different in her business suit with her hair tied back, compared to her usual biking outfit. She had on light makeup and looked very lovely and elegant. I quickly wrote a note, saying that if she had time, I could treat her to lunch, a sandwich and coffee from the nice cafe on the first floor. I put my office phone number on the note. I went into the conference room, placed the note in front of Jane, and then left without interrupting them. About an hour later, I heard a knock on my door, and there she was. "I've heard this is the place to get a great sandwich," she said. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and smiled, telling her that the tuna is especially good, but if she doesn't like tuna, they also have an amazing egg salad. On our way to the cafe, I complimented Jane on how nice she looked compared to the cycling clothes I usually see her in. Lunch was just a pleasant chat between two riders. A few people from my biking group came in for food and noticed us, trying to figure out if something was going on between us. But unfortunately for them, there wasn't. It's now week 27. The cycling club held its final event of the year, a one-day, 100-mile race. Most of the race was on roads, but about 15 miles were off-road. The dirt roads meant I finished the race covered in mud. I fell 4 times, which added to the dirt, plus some scratches and bruises. Nothing cleans cuts like dirt, right? My bike held up well and didn't get a flat tire. I made a mental note to look for a better bike for next year, possibly lighter, but I know lighter can also mean more expensive. I'm not ready to spend a lot of money on a mountain bike right now. At the finish line, there was a team spraying water on the bikes and racers so I could clean off most of the dirt. Jane finished a bit after me, and we shared our stories about the tough race. She had fallen a few times too and had some scratches. Her sister Judy had finished ahead of us and was already celebrating her spot in the top 20. It was chilly, and we all wrapped ourselves in foil blankets to stay warm. There were several RVs parked nearby, and Jane took my hand and led me to one of the bigger ones. "Did you bring a change of clothes?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, glancing at my car. "Well, go get your things," she said. I walked over to my car, grabbed my bag, and put my bike on the rack. I didn't even bother to lock it since it was one of the cheaper bikes, and I doubted anyone would want it. Over the last few months, I noticed that real cycling fans spend thousands of dollars on fancy bikes without a second thought. Some of them would rather skip meals than miss out on a high-end bike. The people in the RV, who were about our age, invited us inside to clean up. They said their water tank was almost full so we could use it to shower. It felt warm inside. We took off our shoes and socks, and I looked around thinking it was nice. Jane went to the back and opened the door to the bathroom. As I was reaching for my clean clothes, she called, "Come here, John, just a second." I looked up and Jane was standing there. "Take off your dirty clothes while I turn on the shower. We can save water by showering together." She smiled playfully. I wasn't sure what to do, but then it all hit me at once. I quickly took off my clothes, turned on the water, and stepped into the shower. The shower had a valve to control the water, and she adjusted it to get the temperature right. Jane pulled me closer, and suddenly, I was in the shower with her, both of us a bit dirty from the race. I was aware of everything happening around us. Just be careful, I thought. The shower was small, and she helped wash my hair, letting the mud wash down the drain. Then she turned around and asked me to help wash her back. I felt nervous but wanted to help her clean up. As I was washing her back, I felt her hands touch my shoulders, and I began to realize how close we were. It seemed like time stood still, and the door knocked. Someone called, "Hey, don't use all the water! Others want to wash too!" I shouted back, "We'll be done soon!" We turned on the water again for a quick rinse and got out, drying ourselves off. We put on clean clothes and gathered up our dirty things. As we stepped outside, we exchanged embarrassed smiles with the couple who owned the RV. The look on his face told me he understood. "Hope you had a nice time," he seemed to say. I just nodded and thanked him. It was announced that there was a pub nearby where everyone could gather for food. Jane and I exchanged glances, and she said, "We'll join you." Once I made sure my things were secure, I sat in my car thinking, what just happened? I took a breath and realized I had shared a moment with Jane, someone I found interesting. I couldn't help but think about Andrea, but in the excitement with Jane, I hadn't thought of her at all. As I drove to the pub, I noticed people inside were excitedly sharing stories about the race. The funniest stories were about falls, and there was a lot of laughter, especially when people showed off their scrapes and bruises from the day. I turned on my phone to text Andrea, letting her know I'd stop for food and probably be home late. She replied quickly, asking how the race went, and I told her I finished and sent her a picture of a scratch on my leg. She sent back a sad face emoji and told me to drive safely. After eating and having a couple of sodas, I decided it was time to leave. Jane was nearby and asked if I could give her a ride home. She was curious about Andrea, asking questions about my life. I realized I didn't mind sharing a bit, so we talked as I drove. I told her about my 3 daughters, sharing how important they were to me. I also mentioned that I realized last year my life was moving too fast, and I needed to find something for myself, which is why I started cycling and kayaking. I tried not to talk too much about Andrea. I didn't want to think about my wife and her situation. When I arrived at Jane's house, I took her bike off the rack, and she grabbed her bag from the back seat and stood there looking at me. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. I knew if I went in, things might happen. At that moment, it felt like what I wanted more than anything. After a moment, I nodded, unable to speak. She pointed to a spot and said, "Park over there. My Thursday classes are still going on. I really enjoy spending time with Rob. I try not to let my happiness with him affect my home life. I want to be a good mother and a good wife. I love my kids and my husband. He works very hard for our family. Lately, I've noticed a small change in John's mood. It's nothing big, but it feels real. I didn't catch this until about a month ago, and I might have missed it if I hadn't started checking in with myself after my time with Rob. I've seen some patterns. John is usually very serious. He focuses hard on his goals and doesn't easily get distracted. It's often hard to get him to relax and have fun. He shows his playful side only from time to time and only when he feels it's okay. That's why our daughters often try to make him laugh with silly jokes and funny faces. John laughs, but the girls know their dad is mostly serious. Lately, though, John has been smiling and joking with them much more. The girls love it. So what's going on? John spent a lot of time biking and kayaking during the summer and fall, but the weather isn't good for those things now. He still wakes up early to run for an hour every morning. I wonder, does this make him happier? We haven't been close in the way I wish we could be. What's going on? Oh no, I just realized he might be looking for someone else to fill the gap he feels is there with me. Sunday. I had a chance to meet Jane for lunch at a cafe near my work. We go there often to grab a quick meal and then head to her place. This time together is the highlight of my day. I hate to admit it, but I get why Andrea loves her weekly meetups with her boyfriend. No surprise she comes home feeling great. I do too, so we both get something out of it. How long will this last, though? I wonder if Jane will get tired of our casual meetings and want someone who can offer her more. I can't blame her. Look at her. She's beautiful, fit, and a real catch. Sunday. The holidays are coming soon, and we're visiting my family. They live about an hour away from us, and we see them often. Thanksgiving and Christmas are times when the girls enjoy being with their grandparents who spoil them with treats. John seems happier now than he has been in a while. He doesn't get close to me unless the girls are around. Our time together feels more like a task than it used to. I miss the gentle, caring man he was before. Now he seems to release his tensions on me instead. But I promised John I would never turn him away. Is this what I want from our marriage? Have I messed things up so much that my husband sees me as just someone to fulfill a need? Maybe spending time with Rob was a mistake. Shouldn't John be the one to meet those needs for me? I really need to think about this. I hope I can fix everything before it's too late. Sunday. I love being with John. He makes me feel special, like I'm the only woman in the world. He balances fun and caring in a way that feels right to me. We spend a couple of hours together, and then we go back to our normal lives. I know he has a wife and kids, and I respect that. He needs to care for them just as I need to control my expectations with him. I remind myself that it's meant to be fun, but honestly, I'm not sure how long this can go on, not for any of us. Sunday. Christmas was busy with all the traditions kids love. We spent time with family doing what we enjoy, eating lots, laughing, and having fun in the snow. We went ice skating, skiing, and watched movies. John and I both took a few days off. I tried to reconnect with him. There has been some distance between us since spring when I told him about my meetings with Rob. I tried to hold his hand whenever I could, but he would only hold it for a moment before letting go. I told him I wanted to talk after the girls went to bed. To my surprise, John poured me a glass of wine and himself a beer. He hadn't drunk much in a while. "Andrea, I have a question," he said quietly. "It's been on my mind since you told me about your boyfriend. That's not how I see it. Rob is just someone I see occasionally to meet a need," I replied. John took a sip and asked, "So where did I fall short? What does he do that I don't? Why do you need another man?" Wow, that was a tough question. John looked me in the eyes as he waited for an answer. "What is it I can't give you? What do I tell him? I've been wanting more, but I didn't plan it. It just happened." I slowly looked around the room, trying to find the right words to explain that my time with Rob was not a reflection on him. By the time we got home, the girls needed us, and there were chores to do. Even after putting them to bed, one of us still had work to finish. Something kept getting in my way. I felt like I was falling apart. I couldn't stop thinking about wanting to be close to someone. I took a long sip of wine and looked at John. I could see he was hurting. John took a small sip of his drink. "Andrea," he said, "I know you say it doesn't involve me, but it feels like it does." I shook my head. "No, you're not failing at anything. You're a great husband." "Then why do I feel so lost?" John asked. "Why do you think you want to be with this guy?" I replied, "To feel happy and fulfilled." I realized I was digging a hole for myself. When I started seeing Rob, I wanted to keep that part of my life separate from my family. Rob knew that what we had was casual and that we didn't owe each other anything. We took precautions and always checked to make sure we were safe from any issues that could harm each other or my husband. We only spent a couple of hours together each week, but those hours left me feeling content, which helped me be a better wife to John. I liked the happiness Rob brought me. But now I saw my life beginning to fall apart. Everything I had built was crumbling. Then John gave me a chance to talk. "I can't control you," he said. "I can only tell you what you do will have effects on all of us, especially the girls. I can't stop your relationship with this man." "I just want to survive," he continued. "I don't want a divorce or to live as just friends. I want you, but I'm okay taking what I can get." "So if you keep seeing him on Thursdays, I'll just have to make it work," he added. I felt relieved for a moment, not realizing John had his own plan that would change everything. We had a hard talk about our marriage. I wanted to understand why Andrea felt the need to see another man. What did I do wrong as a husband? What was I missing? I didn't want to seem harsh, but I also knew her actions would have effects on all of us. I needed Andrea to want to change, not to feel forced. I wanted to stick to the agreement we had. In truth, I found myself needing something too. I started seeing another woman, someone who accepted me for who I was. Although I didn't know how long it would last, I enjoyed being with Jane, not just as a biking friend, but on a more personal level. If it worked for Andrea, then maybe it could work for me too. A year passed since everything changed for us, since what I called the big revelation. Not everything improved, and I wasn't the cause of all the changes. Part of it came from Andrea and part from me. Andrea told me about her other relationship, but I chose not to share mine with her. Maybe that was my way of getting back at her for needing a lover. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough. She claimed it had nothing to do with me, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. It took me time and advice from others to see that I had to make some changes for myself, apart from Andrea and the kids. I started doing things that made me happy. I kept up with my family duties, but I also bought a mountain bike and joined a cycling group. I took up kayaking and started running more. I lost weight and felt stronger. I even considered boxing to release my frustration, but I focused on running and biking first. It worked for me. I also met someone who enjoyed biking like I did, and we started to build a solid friendship. We would see each other at biking events almost every week and have lunch together. She helped me deal with my situation with Andrea in ways I can't fully explain. Andrea says her time with her lover makes her a better partner. Well, spending time with Jane makes me feel better too. I'm not sure if it makes me a better husband, but I think if it helps us, then it's okay for both of us. So that's how a year went by. I never thought I'd find myself in this place in a relationship with a married man. I used to think only foolish women would get involved with someone who was taken. We've all heard about those relationships that lead to trouble, where someone expects the man to leave his wife. That kind of hope is rare for anyone with sense. It's best for single women to steer clear of married men. But sometimes things don't go as planned. A man can come into your life when you least expect it, and suddenly you find yourself in a confusing situation. You might wonder, how did this happen? Even so, you get involved. You try to set limits for yourself. You tell yourself that you won't let him become more than just a casual friend you enjoy spending time with. At first it feels simple and fun, but then you start to get comfortable. Soon you find yourself calling him sweet names like darling or my dear. This is where things can get tricky. You start to let your guard down and imagine a future together. You daydream and make plans that might not really happen. You trick yourself into believing that this is more than just a fling, but then you remind yourself who you really are. You are not the woman he promised to care for in a serious way, but there are also thoughts about why you got close to him in the first place. His wife seems unhappy, possibly spending time with younger men. Is it just you being fooled, or is she fooling herself too? Is she letting her marriage fall apart? Maybe she feels like she's missing out on something exciting, wanting more than her daily life. Some people seek the comfort of a steady family life, filled with love and kids who look up to them for support and happiness. You are a guiding force in your family, the one people turn to for stability. What could be better than that? You have dreams. You're young, healthy, and strong. You work hard and believe in what is right. Sometimes you might be too loyal, but you value a steady life. You want to return home to those who count on you. Yet you also want to give your future children the chance to stand on their own. Your parents taught you this, and it stuck with you. Lately, you've been feeling a longing for family of your own. You want a child. It seems like the right time. Life goes on. Sundays are busy for you, John. The cycling season is starting, and you're excited to get outside and have fun. You and Andrea, your partner, are still together. She's very focused on her real estate career, which keeps her busy. She loves her job, often working late into the night. You've taken on the role of handling things at home. Most weekends and evenings are filled with activities with your kids. Your car is rarely still until late at night when the kids are finally asleep. After that, you clean and relax alone. But you see less and less of Andrea. You suspect she might still be involved with someone else. If you confront her, the real loss would affect your daughters and you. They see their mother less than they'd like. What would change if you decided to separate? Would it only make things harder? Even if you did announce a divorce, Andrea would still work non-stop, and you'd still have to take care of the kids. You continue seeing Jane, an incredible woman. You wonder what steps to take now. Your boss recently shared a new project that may require travel for a few days every other week. You mentioned this to Andrea, but she seemed uninterested. After dinner, as you took the kids to basketball practice, you warned them that you might have to work late occasionally. You asked them to help out more at home. They laughed, knowing they could be relied on. Your oldest daughter, Diane, now 12, asked if that meant they might need a babysitter sometimes. You considered it for a moment. It might happen now and then, but you hope it won't be necessary often. Diane is pretty observant. She knew they hadn't been seeing their mother much. It wasn't just because of the meetings, it was also about Andrea's commitment to her job. This realization hit you hard. You knew you had to figure out your next steps. I felt it was important to talk to Andrea about what the next few months would mean for her. John, my talk with Andrea went as I thought it would. She agreed that my job changes could help me grow in my career. She also said she would handle the kids while I was away. But then, she looked at me as if she were surprised. It felt like she was asking, "Do you think I can't take care of my kids?" I didn't say that. I was a bit irritated by her attitude. What I wanted to explain was that she would need to spend extra time with the kids on the nights I wasn't home. That was it. I went on to say that although her schedule is quite open, she might need to change or delay some plans sometimes. Andrea just nodded and went back to her phone, reading a text or email. And that was that. On Sunday, I had some important updates to share with you. I am working hard on my new project. It's challenging, but I believe if I focus on the engineering parts, I can do it well. I met with my bank's account manager and we talked about the usual topics we cover twice a year. I'm trying to pay off my mortgage sooner than planned, which will save a lot of money in the long run. Leanne told me our other account was doing well and had a healthy balance. I wasn't sure which account she meant, so I thought it might be the investment account I opened 3 years ago. Every month, I put some money into it for stocks. But Leanne looked at me strangely and said it was the account where we deposit bonus checks. My mind was racing as I tried to understand. She reminded me that Andrea adds money to this account, not regularly and not the same amount each time, but it had built up over the years. I was shocked to learn there was more than $180,000 in the account. In that moment, I realized Andrea had been hiding money from me. She had been putting some of her earnings into a secret account. Leanne then noticed my name wasn't on the account. Her expression changed when she realized she had shared something she shouldn't have. She quickly shifted the topic, saying the bank could lower my mortgage interest by 0.5 percentage point due to my loyalty. I decided to let that go to avoid making things awkward. Now, on Sunday, I'm back to cycling and loving it. I got myself a new high-tech bike. It's a red Trek Pro that's lighter than my old one and perfect for trails and roads. I want to take my riding to the next level. I'm working on my endurance and running up to 10 miles a day. I wake up at 5 a.m., run, shower, and then head to work. After I drop the girls at school, I also got a new car. It's designed for more adventurous drives with rugged tires, black wheels, and a dark green color, a great vehicle for fun outings. Jane and Judy are biking again this season. Judy recently broke up with her boyfriend. He moved to California for a job and started dating someone else. Judy seems fine and happy with this change. Jane's situation is different. We are friends and still enjoy spending time together, but things have shifted a bit. Andrea has changed as well, but in her own way. I'm not a therapist, but this past year has taught me to be more aware of how people feel. As an engineer, we're often seen as being better with machines than with people. But now I see things more clearly. I remember how Andrea could be with someone else on Thursdays without me noticing. I missed the small signs that something was wrong. Now that I'm more aware, I'm starting to notice little things. For instance, Jane has been getting closer to me. It's not about romance, but about understanding each other. She often calls me honey instead of my name. She knows my favorite foods and drinks like Diet Coke and occasionally an IPA. She is aware of my weight and clothing size, and she knows I enjoy both pop and classical music. I've also noticed Jane talking more about her family and friends. One day, when I was with the girls, we visited a mobile home exhibition. Jane asked if she could join us, knowing I was taking the girls there. We had a wonderful time exploring. It also gave Jane a chance to bond with my daughters. Later, we stopped at a fast food place, and the girls started asking Jane questions. I told them we met at the cycling club and that she is a better cyclist than I am, which made them laugh. Diana, my oldest, joked that their mom would never ride a mountain bike on trails, which made Jane smile just a little. On the way back home, Diana said that Jane seemed like a really nice person. Earlier, I had noticed that Andrea was changing in small ways. She was spending more time at work and had taken on more clients than she could handle. To help with the workload, she hired an assistant and gave her most of the paperwork. This meant Andrea had more time to meet people and show properties. Unfortunately, this also meant that she was spending less time with our family. She was working almost every evening and most weekends. Because of this, we hardly had any time alone together. She seldom had dinner with us anymore. Late at night, she would come home, take a shower, make a drink, and then get back on her laptop to work. I tried to talk to her several times, but she would often be distracted by her phone or the computer. I mentioned that I had planned a 3-week vacation for all of us in Europe this summer. She just nodded and said that was nice. It hit me that I needed to take action. I wanted to talk to Roy for his advice again. I pulled out the agreement that Andrea and I had made about a year ago. To be honest, it felt silly to think we could write rules for a marriage. Back then, I was in love with Andrea, and our love grew stronger after each of our daughters was born. I thought we had everything we wanted. We had a good family and my career was doing well. Our future looked bright. So why were things falling apart? Life had taken some unexpected turns. Had I taken Andrea for granted? Did I neglect her? Had I failed in my role as a husband? Did I get my priorities wrong? Why was everything so unclear? The hardest part was that my wife didn't seem interested in talking about our marriage. When she did, she brushed off my worries, saying she loved me and the kids and that everything was fine. But it was not. If our marriage was healthy, there wouldn't be secret meetings with someone else. I decided to reach out to Roy for help. He would know what to do, or at least steer me in the right direction. I brought the agreement with me when I got to his office. He welcomed me with his usual serious look. "Hi, John," he said. I sat down feeling unsure. "Well, what's new?" I asked. "I've had better days and I've had worse," I replied. The last time I spoke to Roy was over a year ago. When Andrea and I made our agreement, I held it up. He nodded and looked at his own copy. I should have realized that not much had changed. Things were still tough for me. Andrea was seeing someone else regularly, and I was spending time with a woman who had become a good friend. I was unsure if Roy really understood how complicated my life had become. I felt like Andrea and I were drifting apart. She seemed more distant and focused on her work than before. It was hard to have a real conversation with her. A few weeks ago, I found out she had a secret bank account. It looked like she was saving up a lot of money. What did this all mean? Deep down, I had an idea, but I wanted to hear it from someone who had seen similar situations. "This is certainly concerning," Roy said. "I think it's time to bring in someone who can help you get the answers you need." He called an investigator named Bob, and in a few minutes, Bob arrived. He introduced himself and explained his experience working with lawyers, including Roy. He went over the costs of finding information. I wanted to know more about what Andrea was up to and the reason behind her secret account. Bob took a lot of notes and seemed like he was making plans. He assured me that he could uncover the details I needed to know. I just wanted to understand what was happening with Andrea. On the other hand, maybe she should find out what I knew as well. Things were getting complicated. I wrote Bob a check as a down payment, shook hands, and left to think about what was next. Days went by, and finally Roy called to say Bob had some information for me. We set up a meeting for the next day to go over what he had found. I felt anxious all night, unsure of what to expect. The next day, I hurried to Roy's office. After greetings, we got right to the point. "So, John, I've been looking into what you asked about. Your wife is keeping busy. Here's the important part. She's been meeting with 2 men, seeing each one several times a week. They usually meet at the same place." My heart sank as I heard this news. I found out from the land and property registry that she owns an apartment in a building close to her office. She bought it nearly 2 years ago and has almost finished paying for it. She has a bank account at a bank you mentioned. Right now, she has $321,000 in that account. She puts in 75% of her earnings as a real estate agent. In the last 3 years, she has made big sales, mostly in commercial real estate. Because of this, she is the highest paid agent at her company. However, she turned down a partnership offer. We couldn't find out why she said no. Bob took a sip of water before going on. "I have the names and backgrounds of 2 men she is seeing. These might be the last men in her dating history. Both live in the city. One is married with a family and the other is single. I sense your wife is planning some changes soon. I don't know what she is planning, but she seems to be preparing for something. A hidden apartment and secret money are clear signs a person is planning big changes. True. I don't know when she'll tell you. It could be soon, in a few months, or maybe never." With that, he looked at me and handed me a folder with his report and other information he had gathered. Roy said, "Good job, Bob. If we need anything else, I'll call you." With that, Bob left. I sat there stunned that Andrea had taken on 2 relationships. "What should I do now, Roy?" I asked, feeling like my life was getting worse. Roy looked at me, probably ready to talk about divorce papers. After some discussion, we decided that divorce was likely coming, but I wasn't ready to make that move just yet. I had 3 daughters to take care of, and I wanted to ensure I could get full custody if it came to a divorce. That was an unspoken part of the conversation. Roy sighed deeply and spoke. "John, what do you want to do? There's a lot on your mind. I suggest you think about this for a few days. There's no rush. If Andrea does something serious, we can file for divorce quickly. unless you want to make changes. I know what you want. The documents are already prepared. You just need to call me and everything will be ready in a few hours. Roy smiled when he said this. I nodded, thanked him, and left his office. I indeed had a lot to think about. For the next 3 days, I focused on what Andrea was really doing. I watched her closely, hoping to find some clue, something small that would explain why she had that hidden apartment in the city center. I thought she might be using it to meet someone, a place to keep things from me. We had that relationship agreement. We hadn't talked about it in months, but I thought it meant she could see someone else. I agreed to this. It also meant I could do the same. So, what does this mean for us? Week 83, Jane. I stopped taking birth control pills a couple of months ago because I want a child. I really want a husband and a father for this child. But for now, I will just focus on the baby part. I believe my husband will come around when things settle. I'm not clueless, and I have legal resources. I have colleagues who can help when I need it. One of them told me that John had contacted a divorce lawyer and prepared some paperwork for a possible divorce from Andrea. I did some sneaky research on Andrea, and soon I found out everything she was doing. I discovered she bought a house in the city center near her office and paid for it in cash, which meant she was hiding money from John. I knew this was the work of a woman planning to leave her husband suddenly. I understood her actions. I also knew John would be the father of my child. He knows I want a child. He knows I want him to be a father. I want him in my life all the time, not just for a few hours. I don't want to share him with someone else. I can't understand why she feels she needs more than one man. John is a real man. He is already a father to her children. He cares for me, and I care for him. Week 85. Andrea, why can't John see that I need more than he can offer? I plan to keep being a good wife and mother, but I need more than one man can give. I can't explain it. It's a strong need I must fulfill to be happy. If I don't get what I need, I can't focus. When my needs are met, I work better, and I make more money. The small place I bought in the city center was so I could have a safe spot to enjoy myself. When I meet with Rob and Tom, I feel good. Oh, I should mention Tom, too. He is new at our company and just moved to town. I let him stay in my city center apartment until he finds a place of his own. John and the girls don't notice anything different about me. I'm still his wife and their mother. I love John, and I know he loves me too. Just because I find happiness in another way, it doesn't hurt my family. John understands this. We have a written agreement and have talked everything through. I get what I need, and he gets what he needs. Our lives go on with our daughters. One day I will stop this, and it will just be us. I believe that day will come. John gets it, I think. On week 92, I am Jane. Recently, I've been waking up feeling sick. I usually love my morning coffee to start the day, but lately it hasn't been sitting well. I knew what it meant. So, on my way home from work, I stopped at the local pharmacy and got a test. It confirmed what I already suspected. I called John and told him I wanted to take the test and asked him to come over. After dinner, he arrived at my door, surprisingly with our 3 daughters. I thought it was fitting for the kids to be there when we found out if they would have a new sibling. I knew John's daughters well. We had spent time together over the past year, and I was aware of their activities and school progress. His oldest daughter, Diana, felt much older than her 12 years. She was bright and able to understand the changes happening within our family. She could see that our family was evolving and sensed something significant was about to happen for all of us. Once the girls settled in the kitchen, I held John's hand, and we went to the bathroom next to my bedroom. I showed him the test and said, "This is the moment of truth." We both looked at each other, and I took the test. After washing my hands, I shared the result with John. He looked at it for a moment and said, "It shows that we're going to be parents. Congratulations, Mom." John, Jane, and I visited the doctor, who confirmed that I was indeed pregnant. She estimated that I was about 6 weeks along. This was my cue to prepare for the changes ahead. It was something that should have happened long ago, but now it was essential. In week 94, John brought me updates about Andrea and her partners. There wasn't any change in her behavior. It was time to take action. I knew where her apartment was and decided to scout the area carefully. The building had underground parking that needed keycards to access. I took a direct route without trying to be sneaky. When I arrived, I waited for Andrea to park and go up to her place. I walked to the front door and searched through the directory until I found her name, listed as Leighton. I called her phone and waited for someone to answer. A few minutes later, a man picked up saying, "Hello? I need Andrea Stewart. There's no one here by that name," he replied. "How about Andrea Leighton? Just tell her it's her husband, John Stewart. She's the mother of my 3 daughters." My frustration grew, but I reminded myself to stay calm. I heard whispers in the background before a clear voice came through. "Just pass the phone to her," I said. There was a pause, then Andrea finally spoke. "John, what are you doing here?" "It doesn't matter. Just let me in so we can talk." After a moment, the door buzzed, and I went up to her floor. I knocked on the door and heard hurried voices as if they were getting ready for our meeting. Finally, the door opened, and I faced a young man with wide eyes. He looked frightened. "Don't worry, I'm not here to hurt you. I just need to talk to my wife. You should leave. I'm sure she'll call you soon." He glanced at Andrea, who said, "It's all right, Tom. Go have some coffee. I'll call you." He left, and I stepped inside, scanning the living room. "Nice place," I commented. Andrea's guilty look told me what I needed to know. "Do you have anything to drink?" She nodded and went to the kitchen. I watched as she poured herself a glass of wine. "Hey, do you have some water for me?" She hesitated, but eventually brought back a glass. "Why are you here, John? This isn't going to help anything." I looked at her seriously. "You know why I'm here. You can't keep trying to have a family with me and also have other people in your life without consequences." She took a sip of her wine, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. The silence filled the room. Finally, she asked, "What's in the envelope?" I held my serious look, trying to show her the weight of the situation, wanting her to feel the tension. "I'm really let down by you. I thought you were better than this. Last year, you made me feel foolish. I gave you what you wanted, even letting you have someone else on the side. I tried to ignore it, hoping you would realize what we had and come back to us. I wanted us to be a normal family again. But things didn't change. You've chosen that I'm not the husband you want and that our family isn't what you need." Andrea interrupted me. "No, honey, it's not like that." I shook my head. "Come on, this is nonsense. You know better than to tell me that now." I felt anger rising. "If that's not true, then what is going on here? Tell me," I pressed. Andrea looked down at her hands. Then I found out she was keeping a secret bank account. Her head shot up when I said that. "How do you know about this?" she stammered. "I have friends at the bank too." She sounded flustered. "It's just for our retirement and the girls' education." I stared at her, unsure if I should believe her. "Come on, be honest with me. You were planning to hide this from me. You've built a whole life here with someone else. That's why you're hardly ever home. You have strange hours. I think I finally understand why the girls have been asking where you are." The look on Andrea's face said it all. She was caught. She realized that her choices were catching up with her. Her plan was falling apart, and she decided it was time to stop fooling me. She took a sip of her wine. "What do you want to do, John?" I handed her the envelope I had with me. "Take a look." Andrea stared at it for a long time before slowly picking it up. She opened it and pulled out the first document, which was the agreement we signed last year. With a black marker, I marked it void. She set it aside and looked at the next paper. It was the divorce papers. Andrea leaned back in her chair, sipping her wine as if she couldn't believe what was happening. She stared at the first page, then sighed. I spoke softly. "My lawyer has made a fair plan for both of us." I paused for a moment. "It's clear what you want." I waited to see if Andrea would respond. She was quiet. I went on. "The girls and I will stay in the house. I want them to be unaffected by this." I took a deep breath, waiting for her to react, but she stayed silent. We sat there for a long while, and I finally pushed her to speak. "Say something. Why are you acting like this?" I felt desperate. "I know you don't love me anymore, but what about our kids? You have to care for them." I begged her to say something. I wanted to know what I had done to drive her away. "What's wrong with me as a husband?" I asked. "Nothing," she replied without looking at me. "I won't agree to a divorce. I still want you and the kids. We're still a family. I just need some space." I laughed slightly, surprised. You really think you can live here with someone else and act like we're still married? When was the last time we were together? Andrea hesitated. That was just a few weeks ago. I winced. No, that was months ago. In fact, it has been 8 months. That shows how little time you spend with us. When was the last time you were with Tom? I asked, waiting for an answer. She was silent. I bet you were just getting comfortable when I walked in. You probably should have dressed before I came over. No answer came. So don't tell me about loving me and wanting to keep our family. Your actions show that we aren't your priority. I took a long drink of water. Have your lawyer check over the divorce papers and reach out to mine. His card is in the envelope. I stood up to leave. I won't tell your parents anything, so you can say what you want. Just don't paint me as the bad guy. I'll tell them the truth. I walked to the door. You have a week to have your lawyer contact mine, then we'll file the papers. I opened the door. Call your lover and let him know he can come back. I closed the door, heading home to my daughters. Andrea didn't know how I found out about the apartment and the secret account. I had been saving money since returning to work after our third daughter was born. I had saved over $400,000 for our future and our girls' education. I first thought to buy the apartment as an investment, but then I started meeting Rob there on Thursdays. At first, I had very little in the way of furniture, but later, I bought things to make it nice. When I began dating Tom, he needed a place to stay, so I invited him to live there. I thought it would be just for a short time while he found another place. But here we are, months later, and he is still here. I was shocked when John showed up with those divorce papers. He shouldn't have known about this apartment. I had my lawyer review the divorce plan, and she was surprised that John wanted full custody of the girls. Usually in our state, the mother gets custody. She plans to change things and make it hard for John with an offer that could leave him in a tough spot financially. After paying off the house loan and other expenses, I didn't tell my lawyer about my apartment and other money I had. I also showed her less of my income by only giving her my tax returns. I knew the company's records would show more, and I wouldn't like that. The lawyer set up a meeting to start the process, and then the hard talks would begin. My main goal was to stop the divorce. I wanted to keep my husband and my daughters. I wanted my life to stay the same. My lawyer asked me when I last saw my kids. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. She saw that I was trying to hide the truth. Then she suggested I should be ready to make a deal with John. It's been a while since John and I last spoke. I haven't seen Andrea in weeks. The girls stopped asking about their mom. I decided it was time to start getting rid of things that reminded me of her. I cleaned out her closet, putting everything into boxes and taking down her pictures. This included family photos from the hallway. I placed our wedding album in one of the boxes with her clothes. One night at dinner, the girls and I had a serious talk about their mom. I tried to make it as gentle as I could. I didn't think she would come back. They wanted to know if their mom still loved them. I told them she loved them but needed to deal with some problems before she could be a good mom again. I knew I wasn't being fully honest, but I wanted to protect them from the harsh reality. They were just kids, after all. They felt sad and there were tears. Diana, my wise daughter, spoke to me quietly, saying she understood that her mom left and might not come back. "Dad, we want to help you," she said. "We get it. Mom doesn't want to be with us. If she did, she would be here. But she hasn't been for a long time. That shows us she doesn't want to be our mom anymore. We also know you care about Jane. Will she be our new mom?" I was taken aback by how mature Diana was. She understood what was going on, maybe not all the details, but she got the message. "Would you be okay if I asked Jane to move in with us?" I questioned. Diana smiled back at me. "Does she make you happy, Dad?" I nodded, seeing how smart my daughter was for her age. "Then I think we know what you want. You just have to go for it." She got off her chair and went to her room, where her younger sisters were waiting. Later, Jane called to say she would come over. When she arrived, she brought flowers and my favorite ice cream. He truly knows how to brighten my day. I took the flowers and put them in a vase while opening the ice cream to dig in. John watched me with a grin. "Want to share this ice cream?" I smiled back and said, "Grab a spoon." He took a spoonful and asked, "Have you thought about our baby and plans for the future?" We talked about having a baby, and I told him it was my choice to get pregnant, so I'd take care of the baby. I am independent and have my own resources. I earn good money. Plus, John has his own kids to think about. Yes, I remember this child was my idea. I will be the one caring for him or her. I know that, but as the father of our child, I want to be part of this plan. If that's what you want, you're welcome to help. Good, because I plan to take you with me. I looked at John, confused as he took the ice cream from me, put it in the freezer, cleaned up, and went to the door. Let's go. We got into his car and drove to his house. I had visited before and met his daughters, but this felt different. What's going on? I asked. You will see soon enough. We arrived at his home, and his 3 daughters were standing on the porch, all dressed nicely. They greeted me as we entered. What's happening? In the kitchen, there was food laid out, meats, bread, cheese, and drinks. The girls watched me as if I was part of something special. They offered food, and we made sandwiches, grabbed drinks, and sat together. I had many questions, but I started with them. This is lovely. What's the occasion? Diana, being the eldest, stepped up to speak. We wanted you to feel welcome. Dad said you're having a baby in a few months. Well, thank you. Yes, the baby is due in about 6 months. I'll start showing soon. All 3 girls looked at my stomach as if they could see the baby, trying to guess if it would be a boy or girl. It was sweet to watch them. John cleared his throat. I invited you here because I have a question. One that you don't have to answer today, he added. The girls and I have discussed this for a while, and I would like, if you're open to it, for you to move in with us. We want you to live here with us. Oh my goodness, is he asking me to stay? I was so surprised that I almost dropped my drink. Before I could respond, he said, Take your time with this. No need to rush. We have some work to do before you can move in. We need to fix up a few things and get rid of some furniture. John walked towards the big bedroom as he spoke. He opened the door and stepped inside. I followed him in. The room was completely empty. The door to the closet was open, and it was bare too. The bathroom looked the same way. It was clear that Andrea had moved out of their lives and their home. Their home. The divorce was happening. John walked around the empty space. I packed all her things about a month ago and sent them to her new place. I even gave my bedroom furniture to charity. Where will you sleep? I asked, shocked. For now, I can use the spare room. The bed is big enough, he said. I've hired some painters for this week and could use help picking out new furniture. Would you like to help me? 14 years? John Roy called me today and invited me to his office whenever I could come. It's not often a lawyer does that. So I jumped in the car and drove over quickly. I had no idea if it was good news or bad, but any news would be welcome right now. I wanted the divorce from Andrea to be finalized quickly. The girls and I had already started to move on in our hearts and minds, and all I needed now was the court's approval. When I got to his office, I was taken in right away. His assistant handed me a bottle of water as I sat down. Roy had a big smile on his face. I hoped this was good news. John, I'm happy to tell you that things went well with Andrea's lawyer. She agreed to nearly all the terms I proposed, and I think she'll sign everything in the next 2 or 3 days. That's great. Tell me everything, Roy. What will happen with my girls? He cleared his throat, making sure I paid attention. She agreed that you would have full custody of the girls. It felt like a great weight was lifted off my shoulders. I got what I wanted. The other details were small. You will stay in the house and keep everything in it. You will manage the family bank accounts and your investment account. It's not much, but it matters. You will also get $100,000 from Andrea to set up a school fund for the girls. She will give up any claims to your joint property. You won't have to give her anything. I think I stopped listening after he said I'd keep custody of the girls. I took a big drink of water. Part of me was happy, but part of me felt sad about how my marriage ended, all because of her choices. I realized she didn't see me as the person she wanted. I knew that she wouldn't be happy with just one man, and I understood this divorce had to happen. I looked at Roy and thanked him. I knew I would have to pay him a lot of money, but it would be worth it. When will it be official? And when can I move on? In 2 weeks. I know a judge who will help us speed things up. Do we all need to go to court? No, the lawyers will handle everything. Congratulations, John. You should feel pleased with this outcome. Thanks, Roy. Was I really happy with the result? I wasn't so sure. How could I be happy knowing my life was changing so drastically? My wife, who I thought was loyal, turned out to be not so honest, even after having 3 daughters with me. This shocked me. On the other hand, by some luck, I was getting custody of my 3 daughters, and I was starting a new relationship that looked promising. I had a new partner who was expecting a baby, and each day I was falling more in love with her and wanted her in my life. It was a new beginning for me. There was much to do. Andrea. My lawyer told me that she agreed with John's lawyer. She said I was lucky. Apparently, John's lawyer had all the facts about my life and was ready to tell the judge. My lawyer went along with most of what John wanted, and I was fortunate to get such a deal. She said the papers would be sent to me the next day, and I just needed to sign them and send them back. I did that. 106 days later, the courier brought me a packet from my lawyer with the final divorce papers. Now it was real. I was no longer married to John. Since I agreed to let him have full custody of our daughters, I was no longer part of their lives in that way. A few days ago, I drove past my old house and hoped to see my family. There was a strange car parked beside John's in the driveway. I slowed down, didn't see anyone, and kept driving. I realized I made a big mistake. My need for attention took over my mind, and I ignored what truly mattered in my life. I put my needs first and my family second. I felt foolish now. What should I do next? Well, it's been a little over 3 years now. Jane, my husband, and I have a son, and we're expecting another baby soon. Our daughters are thrilled to have a little brother. They love to take care of him. They always argue over who will push the stroller when we go for walks. It's so sweet to see. My husband is amazing. He is everything I ever wanted and more. I feel so lucky. We sold our house and moved to a new one that better fits our growing family, especially now that we have 5 kids. Think about what really matters to you and focus on those things. I have to use the bathroom again. This baby is always making my bladder feel full. Hey listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.